provision through Christ. Paul wanted to assure the people in Philippi that he was not starving. He says, I don't speak in respect of one. God was meeting his needs. Remember, when Paul left the Judaizers, those that were practicing the law, when he left those to become the apostle of grace, he took a big pay cut. This is like when Donald Trump became president, he took a big pay cut. Now some people said, no, he's still getting paid under the table. You know, all these things they dream up about Donald Trump. He's still getting paid for his businesses. No, he's supposed to put those in trust. He's got someone else running them. He's not supposed to be receiving any money from his business ventures. He's supposed to be paid the president's salary. I don't remember what it is. Anybody know? More than they're worth, right? But 270 something more. It's more than the senators and the representatives get paid, or it should be, because he's the top dog. But he took a pay cut when he became president. Paul took a pay cut when Christ called him on that road to Damascus. Remember, he was he had been a high-ranking member of the Sanhedrin. He had great power to pursue those that were following Christ. He gained great wealth because of his position. Turn over to Galatians real quick. Back to the left, Galatians chapter 1. Read a couple of verses. Thought I was going to finish Philippians this morning. I guess I'm not. Galatians chapter 1, verse number 13. For ye have heard of my conversation or behavior, manner of life, in time past in the Jews' religion, how beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it. And here it is, verse 14, and profited in the Jews' religion above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my fathers. So he profited in the Jews' religions above those that were his equals or peers. So he was not only rich, but he was richer than the rich. Right? So he had to take a pay cut when Jesus called him. He became, as we like to say, poor as a church mouse. He had to depend on other people. However, Paul had an occupation. Turn over to Acts chapter 18. When times got rough, he was in a place for a significant amount of time, and he'd stay in a certain place for a period of time. He had an occupation that he could fall back on. So to give him a few points. Acts chapter 18, verse 1. After these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth, and found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy, with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome, and came unto them. Paul came unto them. And because he was of the same craft, he abode with them and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers. So most people in the day of Christ were either fishermen or shepherds. They either lived, provided for themselves by fishing, or they took care of sheep. They were agricultural. Paul, however, had an artistic craft, occupation. He was a tent maker. Now that required experience and skill, but it was something that he could use wherever he went and provide a little extra income for himself. Verse number 12, back in Philippians. Well, let's finish verse 11. We didn't quite finish it. Paul says in the last part of the verse, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Now, I remember as a kid, first time I heard this, from a visiting preacher. He came in and he preached a message out of Philippians, and he come to this verse here, and he says, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. And then he would say, even in Kansas, which is where we were at that time. And it wasn't long after that, I went in the Air Force and went all over the place. I went to, first I went to San Antonio for basic training. Then I went to Amarillo to continue basic training. 4 weeks in San Antonio at Lackland, 2 weeks in Amarillo. And from there I went to school in Rantoul, Illinois. And from Rantoul, Illinois, I got my first permanent assignment, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Debbie Warren Air Force Base, that's where Stephanie was born, and her brother, Timothy. And from Wyoming, I went to Mississippi to another school for 2 years. From Mississippi, I went to Washington State, Tacoma, Washington, just south of Seattle. While in Washington State, I got orders to go to Thailand for 1 year. I had to go to school again before I went there, but I was working on F-4s, fighter jets, actually the reconnaissance version of the F-4. And I went to school down in Phoenix. No, I didn't go to school in Phoenix. That's where I moved the family to. We all moved down to Tempe, Arizona, which is one of those little towns around Phoenix. And then I went by myself over to Victorville, California, high desert, and went to school for 2 weeks. And then my family moved back to Missouri, where my wife's parents were. And I went to Thailand. And then from Thailand, I got reassigned back to upstate New York, up in Plattsburgh Air Force Base, about 60 miles south of Montreal. My family, of course, joined me again. And then from New York, we came to Texas, Bergstrom Air Force Base. And while we were here, I got orders to go to Germany. I left my family here. I went to Germany for 1.5 years, came back to Bergstrom. Then I retired after 20 years and 1 month at Bergstrom. Since then, Bergstrom is closed. I don't know whether they had anything to do with me retiring or not, I don't know. I was the editor of the base newspaper. Powerful position. Very influential job, you know. I won't go into about colonels begging me to put stuff in the paper. And I say, my boss is the full colonel, and he controls the whole base, or the whole wing, and he's just down the hall. If you want that in the paper, you're going to have to go talk to him, because I don't have room for it. But anyway, I said all that to say this, and then I got to quit. Everywhere I was, we'd go to church, we'd find a church, and every time there would always be somebody to come in and preach the message, and when they get to that particular verse, they'd always do the same thing. In whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Even New York, even Mississippi, even Wyoming, Washington, Texas, you know, it's regardless. And it always got a laugh, because it's funny. Because that's taking Scripture and giving it a different meaning, isn't it? That's what Peter says we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to twist the Scriptures. Amen? Well, we'll pick up next week, the next verse. Maybe next week we'll finish Philippians. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for the Bible. Thank you, Lord, for the Scriptures. Thank you, Lord, for especially the ones that Paul wrote, because that's where we get our doctrine. That's where we get our manner of living. That's where we get the instructions for those that are believers of grace. Pray that you're blessed now as we go into the service to follow. Be with the music, especially be with our pastor as he opens the Word of God to us today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.